This story happened to me last year on the 4th of July. My friend was having a house party and I was quite excited to go. Since coming back from college for the summer, this was the first party I was going to, so I was going to see a lot of people I haven't seen in a year. Upon arriving at the party a bit late, I was surprised to see that there was probably over 100 people there. I drove to the party, so I wasn't going to have anything to drink, which I was fine with because I wasn't a big drinker anyway, and I wasn't planning on staying that long either. While I was inside, I began catching up with my friends that I had not seen in a while. At some point I headed over to the washroom. Now there were a lot of people at this party, but I still managed to notice that there was someone there I hadn't seen before. He was an older looking man, standing sort of by himself in the back corner of a room. No one else really noticed him with the loud music and darkness of the house, but I definitely did. I looked at him and we made eye contact. I broke the eye contact and looked away out of awkwardness, but I could see out of my peripheral vision that he was still staring. For context, I'm a small female, so I'm definitely more aware when I'm in these situations, like parties, walking alone, etc. I went to the washroom, and when I came out, the man was still there. I definitely took note of his presence and went back over to my friends. I probably stayed there for about another hour when I realized I almost forgot about the man. I went back over to check if he was still there out of curiosity, and he wasn't. The man was gone. I was surprised, but carried on as if nothing happened. I probably stayed for another hour until I decided that it was time to go. I said goodbye to everyone as it was still early in the night, and the party wasn't dying down anytime soon. I left, got in my car, and began driving. When leaving the cul-de-sac and turning onto the main street, I noticed a car pull out of the cul-de-sac on the other side of the street. The neighborhood was kind of odd, but the main structure was a street going through the middle with a cul-de-sac at the end. On either sides of the main street were other streets with cul-de-sacs. I kept driving and noticed that the car was making a lot of the same turns as I was. After 5 turns in a row, I began trying to lose whoever was following me, and eventually I did. Well, I thought I did. I got home fine and went right to bed because I was tired and it was pretty late for me. Later that night while I was sleeping, I heard something. It woke me up, but I wasn't sure what it was. I listened and heard it again. It was something from my window. I lived in a 1-story house, so when I realized someone was tapping on my window, I freaked out. I went to check to make sure it wasn't someone messing with me that I knew. When the tapping stopped for a slight bit, I lifted up the blind slightly to check, and what I saw still gives me chills to this day. The same man from the party earlier was standing outside my window. I threw myself back and onto the ground, screaming very loud. I was so deathly afraid at that moment. I thought my heart was going to explode. My screaming woke my parents up, and my dad rushed into my room. I told him what happened, and he ran to the front door to chase the man, but it was too late. We called the police to file a report about it, but the good thing is that it's never happened since. I'm definitely more aware of my surroundings, even more than I already was, especially now when going to parties. I'm just glad nothing bad happened that day. This story happened to me 3 years ago. I was having some friends over to celebrate 4th of July and have fun while my younger brother and parents went out. My parents dropped my little brother off at a party when they left because he didn't have his license at the time, and I was supposed to pick him up after. Now, I live in a more secluded area of a smaller sort of town, so there were a lot of long, dark roads, kind of more secluded roads. All my friends had arrived, and we were excited to celebrate. Some of my friends brought fireworks to light, so I was excited to see those go off as well. For the past few years, I would have friends over at my house, and we would always light fireworks, so it was almost like a tradition at this point. We had been having fun for a few hours, lighting fireworks and doing some other activities when my brother called me to pick him up. I told him I'd be there soon and would be leaving now. I didn't mind picking him up that much because it was only like a 10-minute drive. I told my friends where I was heading and that I would be back shortly, and they all understood. I made it to the house he was at. When I got there, I texted him to come outside. Eventually, after a few minutes, he finally did. When he got in the car, I made some small talk with him, asking him how the party was, and overall the car ride was normal. We eventually got to one of the secluded parts of the road, and all of a sudden I heard a bump sound. There was a slight shift in the vehicle too. I pulled over and got out to see what happened. My tire was flat. It was odd though because there were multiple nails sticking into the tire. I didn't think too much of it and told my brother that we were going to have to change the tire. I was pretty annoyed at the situation because I still had friends over and me and my brother began to argue. We were trying to blame the situation on each other, but we both realized that that was not going to help us in this situation. We were annoyed and both just wanted to get home, and we were both taking our anger out on each other, which was not a good thing to do. While we were working changing the tire, we both heard something come from the forest on the side of the road behind us. Now remember, we live in a more less dense country area, so there were lots of animals around. That's why me and my brother dismissed it as animals and kept working on what we needed to do. Not even 2 minutes later, a noise from the forest was heard from the other side of the road. Now I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous here. This is when I decided to take the flashlight I was holding and point it toward the tree line. I scanned the tree line for a bit until I saw a humanoid figure standing half behind a tree. I felt so much fear at that moment, and I couldn't even scream out of terror. I guess my brother saw as well because he started running before I did. We ran all the way back to our house where we told everyone inside about what had just happened. There were 10 of us now, so everyone got flashlights and hopped in some vehicles. We all went to the same spot where it happened, 5 of us on each side, and we all spread out looking for them, but no one could find them. While everyone was there, we changed the tire and returned to my house. We didn't go to the police, as the person didn't commit a crime technically. There was also no way of proving he was the one who put the nails on the road, or however many people there were. It is definitely a story that me and my brother will be telling for many years to come. This was definitely my most memorable 4th of July. It happened to me 2 years ago. Me and my friends would normally just roam the streets at night and kinda just mess around doing our own thing. I remember the last 4th of July before this event happened, I was spending it with my family, so this year I was super excited to hang out with my friends. It was me and 3 other buddies. We had been friends since like 5th grade, and there was nothing I enjoyed more than just chilling and hanging out with these guys. We were all about 17 at the time, so our friendship was definitely still strong, considering this story happened to me 2 years ago and we are still great friends to this day. I remember on this night we decided that we were going to hide in the forest on the side of the road and scare people. I know, weird, right? But random stuff like this is just what we genuinely enjoyed doing. Our friend group was not the type that enjoyed partying that much, so stuff like this was always done. We walked over to the forest late at night, and we were just kind of chilling there while we were waiting for people to walk by. I can't remember what we were talking about when there was a slight crunch of leaves or a stick coming deeper into the forest. Everything went quiet while we were waiting to hear something else, because it was kind of close. Now you have to remember that it was pitch black in this forest, and it was late enough to the point that anyone at parties were most likely going to start heading back home. So there weren't that many fireworks going off either. That's why it was quite quiet in this forest and very dark. A few minutes later, there was another crack on the ground, but this one sounded a lot closer and to the left of us this time. We all kind of decided that we should probably leave even if it was just an animal. We didn't want to take any chances. We did leave and all went our separate ways to get home since we had already been hanging out for hours at that point. The walk home for me was not too far, but being alone made me feel a bit on edge. I was constantly checking behind me, especially after hearing those noises in the forest. About 5 minutes into the walk, I looked behind me again and saw a man dive below a car at the end of the street when I made eye contact with him. I wasn't taking any chances and decided to start sprinting to my house. I took a quick glance behind me, and now I saw the man chasing me. This was by far the most adrenaline I've ever got from something, and the fear I felt in the moment kept me going. I was only a few minutes away from home, and had a decent lead on the man. I kept running, not looking back out of the fear that it would slow me down. I could hear the man's footsteps in the distance as well. I turned the corner and ran down my street, and started to type in the garage code. I had to slam each number in because of how shaky my hands were. I was fumbling with the code and began to panic. I finally punched it in right, and now I had to stand there in what felt like the longest seconds of my life. Finally, the door began to open, but I could hear the man getting closer until he was running down my street. I went under the garage door and went to close it, but the man was already there and ran through. As fast as I could, I closed the inside garage door and locked it, with probably a second to spare as the man tried the door handle. I yelled out, "Get out of here, I'm calling the police." The man kept trying the door, though it only lasted about 30 seconds. But I'll tell you, those 30 seconds sure as hell felt like an hour. The man left, and I woke my parents up to tell them what had just happened. My dad woke my brother up, and we all went in his car to go look for the man, but no luck. I asked my parents what I should do, and they said maybe I should report it. I texted all my friends about what happened, and they were all probably as shocked as I was. Some didn't even believe me at first. I decided to file a report, but there's not much I could give about the description of the man, other than he had all black on and had a beard from when I saw him up close. This did not deter us from the dumb stuff that we normally do, but we were all a bit more cautious after this experience happened to all of us. I always just wonder, what would have happened if I was a second slower?